Ronald Moore's company trip takes a shocking turn when he finds out his reservation was secretly canceled by his boss, Edward, the CEO's son. Stranded and betrayed, Ronald decides to visit the destination anyway, leading to a surprise reunion with his old friend, Jacob. As Edward's true intentions are exposed, Ronald faces an unexpected opportunity that could change his career forever. Will he seize the chance or let Edward's jealousy stand in his way? I canceled your reservation. What? No way. On the day of the company trip I had been looking forward to, I arrived at the meeting place confused. There was no one at the meeting spot. I called my boss, Edward, to check the situation, and he gave me this response. See ya. I can't enjoy the trip with your cocky face around. It's not personal. You can just head to the office and work on your own. Edward hung up the phone after saying that. My name is Ronald Moore. I'm a 25-year-old office worker. I was raised by a single mother. My father died in a car accident when I was still young. Since then, my mother has raised me independently, working multiple part-time jobs to support us. She worked at a supermarket from midnight to early morning and at a restaurant from afternoon to evening, making meals for me in between. I am truly grateful for her efforts. That's why I wanted to become independent as soon as possible to repay her. So, after graduating from high school, I didn't go to college and instead joined PC Tech. PC Tech is a subsidiary of a major electronics manufacturer. We handle a wide variety of electrical components and have many clients, so we're always busy. At first, I made a lot of mistakes and often panicked about missing deadlines, but now I've grown enough to have backup plans from A to C, and I no longer miss deadlines. Moreover, this term, I succeeded in developing a large new business, and I might receive the highest performance evaluation, so my work is going great. This is all thanks to the wonderful colleagues and bosses around me. Most employees at PC Tech are college graduates, so when I first joined as a high school graduate, I was intimidated and overwhelmed by my older colleagues. However, my colleagues and bosses never labeled me or looked down on me for being a high school graduate. Instead, they praised me for working hard despite my young age and encouraged me to ask for help whenever needed. This allowed me to work comfortably and grow. Over time, I was given the responsibility of heading up a fresh sales projects team, overseeing 3 team members. My career seemed to be going smoothly, or so I thought. Since joining the company, there was one person who constantly targeted me and treated me poorly. His name was Edward White, the son of the company's CEO and my direct supervisor. Edward was overly obsessed with being Mr. White's son, and he had a severely biased view, looking down on everyone, whether they were his superiors or subordinates. He constantly mocked me, calling me a high school dropout and an uneducated fool, and took an overbearing attitude, boasting about his own competence and demanding that I work for his benefit. My colleagues and even the senior managers above Edward struggled to deal with him. One day, while I was working overtime alone to prepare for the next day's tasks, Edward stomped over to my desk with heavy footsteps. Hey, Ronald. Yes? What is it, Edward? You messed up the parts order for Axe Corporation. Fix it immediately. But you're the one in charge of Axe Corporation, aren't you? What did you say? Are you talking back to me? You're my subordinate, so my work is your work too. That's unreasonable. Stop complaining and go apologize to the client first thing in the morning. Also, let the delivery destination know that the deadline will be delayed. But I have an appointment with a client tomorrow. Don't mess with me. I don't care. Just make sure you go tomorrow. Edward's face was red with anger, but he was the one in charge of Axe Corporation, and there was no way I could know the progress of the orders and deliveries. It was completely unreasonable. Sensing my rebellious attitude, Edward continued. Seriously, Why does an uneducated high school dropout like you even work at our company? If you keep up that attitude, I'll fire you. No way. Then let's make it collective responsibility. I'll fire your subordinates too. I'm the CEO's son. If I tell you to do something, just do it without complaining. Understood. As usual, Edward was wielding his authority as the CEO's son. His high customer satisfaction and successful development of new business made him deeply resentful of my achievements as a high school graduate. Edward said, "You should have just agreed from the start." He looked down on me with a mocking expression before leaving. I decided to rearrange my schedule and contact the clients. Then, I pulled up the documents for Axe Corporation from the drive, checked the contents, and reviewed the emails with the client. It turned out that Edward hadn't made a mistake in the order, but had forgotten to place it entirely. This required rescheduling the delivery and reworking various schedules. I let out a big sigh, put my hand on my forehead, and began thinking about how to handle the situation. At that moment, I heard a noise behind me and turned around. The sales department door was slightly ajar. I assumed someone from another department had passed by in the hallway. Resigning myself to a long night of overtime, I focused on my PC in the dimly lit office. A few weeks after that incident, a company trip for all PC Tech employees was proposed. Apparently, Mr. White, the CEO, had budgeted and planned it to reward the employees. Mr. White was a highly capable leader who built the company from the ground up, and he was a man of great character, highly trusted by the employees, quite the opposite of Edward. The chosen destination for the trip was Denver, with a historical resort located near the city's center, allowing for personal sightseeing during the day. I wasn't very enthusiastic about the company trip, but then I remembered my best friend from high school lived in Denver, so I decided to participate. My friend's name is Jacob Clark. I quickly called Jacob to tell him about the Denver trip. When I asked if we could meet during my free time, he was delighted and agreed to meet. It was a rare opportunity to visit, as I seldom had the chance otherwise. The last time we hung out was when I went to celebrate him starting college and moving out on his own after finishing high school. Jacob was a typical honor student, always studying quietly even during breaks. One day, I witnessed a group of rowdy boys in our class teasing and harassing Jacob while he was studying. "Hey nerd, if you keep studying like that, your butt's gonna stick to the chair. That's not going to happen. Just leave me alone. Damn, you are so dull. Seriously annoying. Hey, you must have a lot of money since you never spend it on anything fun. Give it to us. We'll use it for you. Stop it." Jacob was surrounded by 3 boys, his face tense with fear. I instinctively grabbed the hand of the boy reaching for Jacob and twisted it. "Hey, knock it off." "Huh? Oh, Ronald? Come on, we're just joking around. Don't get so mad. Joke or not, it's not funny. Don't ever do it again." "Yeah, got it." Growing up, I was often teased for being from a single-parent household, and maybe because of my stern look, I frequently got into fights. But after winning every fight that came my way, I ended up being feared by the rowdy kids. When I glared at them, the entire group quickly backed down and retreated. Jacob was very grateful for that incident, and it became the start of our friendship. When I started talking to Jacob, I realized our family backgrounds and aspirations were completely different, but we surprisingly got along very well. At that time, I was determined to excel academically to secure a good job and put my mother at ease. But I wasn't very good at studying, and often struggled with things I couldn't understand. When I shared my concerns with Jacob, he said, "If you don't mind, I can help," and he started teaching me. "Hey, Jacob, I'm stuck on this math problem. Can you help me out?" "Sure, use this formula here." "Oh, I see. Thanks. You're amazing, Jacob." "Oh, you are exaggerating." "Well, you're aiming for a top university. Are you sure you should be helping me with my studies?" "Of course. Teaching others helps me understand better, so I'm grateful." "Oh, glad to hear that. I need to raise my grades to get a good recommendation for job applications." "You can do it. Your mom was really grateful for the help with your studies and treated me to a delicious meal. I want you to succeed in your job hunt and make her happy. Exactly. I want to make things easier for her as soon as possible. But I also hope you get into your dream university, Jacob. Just don't push yourself too hard. That's how Jacob and I hit it off and started studying together. We visited each other's houses, studied at McDonald's or cafes during breaks, played at the arcade on the way home, and thanks to Jacob, I had a fulfilling high school life. Remembering those days, I looked forward to reuniting with Jacob while working hard. The day of the trip arrived. I packed my suitcase and prepared a souvenir for Jacob, then headed to the airport. I arrived there a bit earlier than the instructed time, but not a single one of the more than 30 employees was there, leaving me stunned. I checked the email from Edward again, but the time was correct. With a bad feeling inside, I waited for everyone to arrive. However, no one came, no matter how long I waited. Reluctantly, I decided to call Edward. "Excuse me, Edward, where are you now?" "Oh, Ronald. What's up?" "Well, I came to the place mentioned in the email, but no one's here, so I called." "Too bad for you. We've already left." "What? You're marked as late and a no-show. I canceled your reservation, so don't bother coming." "No way. See ya. I can't enjoy the trip with your cocky face around. It's not personal. You can just head to the office and work on your own." With that, Edward hung up the phone. He had given me a fake trip schedule. I was furious at being marked as a no-show for such a selfish reason. But more importantly, I had to figure out what to do about my promise to Jacob. I had been looking forward to seeing him again, and I realized it might be more relaxing to move around freely rather than in a group, so I decided to head to the destination at my own expense. When I arrived at the airport, Jacob was waiting for me at the gate. "Jacob, it's been so long. Glad you made it. But why are you alone on a company trip?" "Well, actually, I'll hear the details later. There's a great diner nearby. They serve alcohol too, so let's grab a bite first." "Yeah, sounds good. Let's go. I'm starving." After Jacob and I joyfully reunited, we decided to have lunch at a diner he recommended. The spacious seats were partitioned, creating a comfortable space for conversation. We sat down and quickly ordered beers. When the beers arrived, we clinked glasses and celebrated our reunion. "Cheers! This beer tastes amazing." "Cheers!" As we enjoyed the delicious midday beer, Jacob asked with concern, "But what happened to the other employees?" "Well, actually, my boss messed with me and marked me as a no-show." "What?" "He gave me a fake meeting time. When I called, he said they canceled my reservation." "It's ridiculous, right? That's insane. Shouldn't you report this to someone higher up?" "He's the CEO's son. No one dares to say anything. He threatens to fire anyone who opposes him. That's messed up. By the way, I don't have a place to stay tonight. They canceled my lodging too. Do you know any nearby hotels?" "Forget a hotel. Just stay at my place." "Really? Thanks." When I told Jacob about the situation, he got even angrier than I was, and I felt a bit relieved. After catching up for a while, we decided to head to Jacob's apartment. Jacob graduated from a prestigious medical school in Denver and has been working at a university hospital since last year. When I visited him before, he was living in a one-room student apartment, but now he had moved to a spacious two-bedroom apartment. When we arrived at Jacob's place, I was amazed by the size of the entrance. That was just the beginning. Once inside, I was blown away by how clean and stylish it looked, like a model room, the comfort of the sofa, and the size of the TV display. "Your place is incredible, Jacob. I bought a ton of drinks, but I'm afraid to open them here and mess things up." "What are you talking about? It's in the suburbs, so the rent isn't as high as you might think. Plus, I get some support from the hospital." "I see. This sofa is so comfy, I could fall asleep in seconds. Make yourself at home." As we chatted about nothing in particular, we changed into comfortable clothes and relaxed. Then the intercom buzzed. "Ah, finally here. Were you expecting someone?" Jacob grinned at my question. He unlocked the entrance, and after a short wait, the doorbell rang. When Jacob opened the door, Standing there were Mr. White, my company's CEO, and Edward. "We've been waiting for you, Uncle." "What? Mr. White? Ronald? I thought you were feeling unwell." "Excuse me?" I was completely confused and couldn't help but shout. Edward, who was standing next to Mr. White, turned pale the moment he saw me. "It's been a while, Uncle. Please come in." "Jacob, it's been a long time. I've heard you're doing great things." "I've heard all about it." Jacob chatted familiarly with Mr. White as he invited them into the living room. Once we all sat down on the living room sofa, I couldn't hold back any longer and asked Jacob about his relationship with Mr. White. "Jacob, you know Mr. White?" "Yeah, David is my uncle." "Uncle? Then what about Edward?" "Yeah, he's my cousin." "What? I was surprised to learn that you and Jacob were friends, Ronald." I chose Denver as the trip destination to see Jacob after a long time. "I see." I was shocked to hear that Mr. White and Edward were Jacob's relatives. Seeing my reaction, Jacob laughed, then gave a cold stare at Edward. "More importantly, Edward, what's this about treating Ronald as a no-show? I heard you gave him a fake schedule and excluded him from the trip." "No, it must be some kind of misunderstanding. Don't bother denying it. I've heard everything from Ronald. You said you couldn't enjoy the trip with his cocky face around. That was unbelievably low." "Well, it was just a joke. I didn't think he'd actually not show up." Jacob, visibly angry from what I had told him, grilled Edward with a stern expression. Mr. White, who had been listening to Jacob, suddenly turned furious and glared at Edward. "Did you really do that?" "No, Dad." "What do you mean? Explain yourself." "It's Ronald's fault. He's always been defiant towards me." "You idiot. Don't think I haven't heard about your bad reputation. I've also received reports about your horrible treatment of Ronald." "No way. I hoped you'd grow out of it, but instead of improving, you envied a talented employee and harassed him. This is unacceptable. Fix that terrible attitude of yours. You're fired." Edward, scolded and fired on the spot, broke down crying and clung to Mr. White, begging for forgiveness. But Mr. White wouldn't listen and kicked Edward out of the room. After that, Jacob, Mr. White, and I shared a drink together. "Ronald, I'm truly sorry for my foolish son." "No problem, but I'm surprised to find out you two know each other." "Uncle, Ronald and I have been good friends since high school. He helped me out when I was getting bullied for studying all the time." "I see. Ronald could have gone to college, but he chose to work at your company to support his mother as soon as possible. He's honest, responsible, and can't ignore someone in need. He's a kind and understanding guy." "I see. I've always kept an eye on you, Ronald." Mr. White smiled kindly at me and said, "You're diligent, highly trusted by our clients, and I've even heard good things about you from the heads of our partner companies. Thank you for working so hard." "Oh, I'm honored. I've also seen you working late many times." "I see. I'm getting old. It's time to groom a successor and think about passing the torch." "I see. Ronald, I want you to be the next CEO." "What?" "Of course, not immediately. My son turned out to be a disappointment. I want someone who can build trustworthy relationships with clients like you to take over." Hearing Mr. White's words, I was too shocked to speak. Jacob teased me. "Go for it. You are going to be the next CEO." "Hey, Jacob, don't worry, you can do it." Jacob patted my back, encouraging me, and I accepted Mr. White's offer. From then on, as the designated next CEO, I worked even more seriously to create a better work environment and to become a trusted leader as soon as possible.